Everybody, welcome back to episode 82 of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. I'm with Dr. Mack from Crucial Data. Dr. Mack, I think I had you on back in episode 40 something. Now we're on 82.
Something like that. It's been about, I think 2 months or better, 3 months.
Yeah, we've
Yep.
been cranking them out.
You have. You have. Well, it's Friday. Weather's nice down here in Tampa. All the storms are gone, so
Thankfully.
back to business.
Yeah,
But
back to business. And so Dr. Mack is a key opinion leader for technology. I mean, this is a wide open field. Like it's obviously going to be at the forefront of every industry, but we're here to talk about clinical research. Uh, we're already seeing some changes implemented, and it's just the beginnings. And Dr. Mack really has a deep understanding of where these technologies are taking us, how they could be implemented, which ones are currently being implemented, which ones are far fetched. And of course, there's always something that comes out of left field that no one predicted. And so it's interesting to always kind of speculate as to what those things may be going forward. But let me start with this, Dr. Mack, because I have a lot of CRAs watching or listening, a lot of aspiring people that are trying to get into CRO work or sponsor work, mostly
right.
CRAs, okay?
Okay.
Um, PIs are a little less concerned about this, but the CRAs, they're starting to get worried about algorithms and artificial intelligence replacing them. What do you think about this?
We talked a little bit about this last time. I think just like any other industry, you're going to have a transition. Just like the people that used to make buggies and the bodies for buggies back in carriages back in the day, some of them transition to making car bodies. So you're never going to have an industry where you're doing the same thing for hundreds of years or thousands of years, and in today's world it's lucky if you do the same thing for 20 or 30 years. Even in medicine, you still have some transitions. You still go from open surgeries, laparoscopic surgeries, to more non-invasive procedures for faster healing, and that makes sense that we're always evolving. So to answer your question on the CCRCs and the CRAs and those type of folks, I think the job will change. I think the duties will change. I believe that you're going to see probably a CRA doing a similar job, because what we can't take away the consent process. So I'll get into it on e-consent and how we can
Yes.
send a PDF out and they can review it and read it, and we do all these educational videos about the IP and potential risks and all that kind of stuff. But now that frees up the person to get online, like you and I are talking about right now, and I can look across the video screen and see your body language and see you shaking, and you're understanding what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So in the consenting process, it was always in person, but now we're going to see it where it's probably going to be a lot more remote, using video communication, and then taking this video log and saving it as part of the participant file.
Ah,
So
like a source
yeah,
document.
yeah. So it's going to be your source document along with your PDF that's been legally signed and HIPAA and FDA compliant or regulatory compliant.
Interesting. I've never thought of that, but it makes sense because in other industries, I mean, in blogging, for example,
Right.
there's a, because I study social media marketing, blog content marketing, all that stuff, there's talk that eventually the written word is going to disappear because people prefer audio, people prefer video, people are texting with emojis. So 100
Right.
years from now, a written article may not do as well as a audio file or a video
Right.
file, right? And I
Or
never put two and two together and see how that can actually also occur in clinical research with source documents, with paper source.
right, and you get to the ethics of it, the ethics of consenting, and you can have that consent, but to go back and look at it, now we can go back and look at the body language, the interaction, the questions, the understanding. Because we have a video, we have an audio, we have an
Yes.
interaction going. Then we have the legal document, just like we've always had. But I think for even consenting, having a short video educational series, just like you would in a regular clinical medical environment, to educate them on what this is really all about. But going back to your question on job transition and description, I think I'm trying to culminate this. I think what you're going to see is a lot less busy work and a lot more analysis. Instead of taking a paper CRF and having a data entry person do it. Let's say the data is collected electronically, it gets populated automatically to the CRF, and then at that point, then it's in the file. Now you're going to have a CRA that's reviewing it. So it's going to, I think, going to go more to a quality control, because you're still going to need a human factor in there for quality. It's nice to automate it, and if we can automate it accurately, it does provide better, more accurate data.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still going to have the human factor of looking through this, was this data that came in correct? And so they're going to be more of a quality control, and maybe even to the point of you're going to see Six Sigma come into play more and more in clinical research. But I think my advice to any CRA is become more tech savvy. You don't have to write code. I don't write code.
Okay.
I say, can this software work with this wearable, or can this software work with these guys' software to do genetic testing, and can we marry them up? And the guys that are doing all the coding and stuff say, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't. But it's going to take the experienced CCRC or CRA to recognize what works, what doesn't, how, basically recognizing new technology and seeing how, efficacious it can be in a trial. So we, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're all turning into kind of geeky people. You and I both have our Apple Watches. It's monitoring our pulse rates right now. We would have never thought of that 5 years ago. But people, the technology is not that scary. A lot of it they're using already, but it's just applying more and more of it to work. But you're always going to need the human factor, but I can't answer totally how that'll change beyond that.
Right, nobody knows. I mean, we can only speculate. What I tell people just thinking of getting into this industry, because I run a CRA academy, so there's a lot of people training and entering the field, and we've gotten a lot of them hired already. They're concerned. Like, I get this question frequently. Hey, AI is coming, artificial intelligence. Should we be concerned? And I tell them all, hey, I don't know. Every industry is going to be affected. I think you have a good 10 to 15 years of not having to worry about this, but I could be wrong. And after that,
Well,
nobody knows, and every industry will be impacted.
okay, let's take an example of that. Let's take an example of machine learning. So we're working on image recognition, searching, and comparison. So right now I'm working on a little side project to do a mini cog test for Alzheimer's and put it in an app form. And if you've ever seen the
Ah,
test, you have to actually draw the clock. They have to put the numbers in the correct spot, and they have to put the correct time that is
yeah, I
written
do
down.
this scale all the time. The CDR,
Right.
right?
Right. So you have a bunch of questions, but the most challenging thing is how do you have a person draw on their phone a clock? So we're working with Amazon on that and a few other companies to get that. And that's not the end all be all. What I see the process going to the next evolution is, let's say we have a chest AP X-ray. And let's say we're doing a stent or bifurcated stent. Let's say we're doing lower abdominal AP, for descending aorta, and we're putting. Sorry, you have to cut that out. All right, let me get started again. So you're doing an AP X-ray, descending aorta, and you're looking at a bifurcated stent, and that device being put in. How efficacious is it? What's the efficacy? Let's say after three years post-surgical. Maybe you want to do a phase 4 trial on that, a phase 4 study. So we have the X-rays from before, where we took the CT images, but for all intents and purposes, it's an AP shot of the stent after, and then we can go back and take a similar shot. Now we can use machine learning to tell what the difference is. And maybe that's where your CRA can come in and go, okay, how are we going to use this technology to look at what's in the protocol? Or the person designing the protocol can say to the sponsor, hey, we can go back and measure by percentage or millimeter the changes in these 200 patients. And just through setting up the machine learning process and setting up the process and the SOP for that, they could go back and take the old images, compare them to the new images, and do all the measurement, have the computer do all the measurements. So it can come up with some very interesting stuff pretty quickly. But we're going to see more machine learning way before AI. Machine learning meaning, it can recognize stuff. It can recognize and search for images or certain things. So that's the next step in the next few years. Jeff Bezos, he has a picture of him in a crowd, and the computer picks him up at 99.2% accuracy all the time, and so it's quite interesting that we're going to get to that. But that goes into it goes into facial recognition. Eventually, for let's say Bell's palsy studies. There's a young girl at Bio International that presented an app on comparing before and after. And how good the person's recovering by their facial recognition points. And so how do you take that and put it into a trial? That's where your CRAs are going to come in and go, oh yeah, this could work in a trial, because in the back of their mind they're going, okay, how's this regulatory compliant? How can we make it regulatory compliant? Is it already cleared by FDA as an app or a software? How can we integrate this into trial work? And I think that's where we're going to add value, because they can go back to a sponsor or the project manager and say, hey, this is a technique that we could use to do this trial more effectively. Mm-hmm. So that's...
And you guys are working on all these crazy things that some may actually have practical implications at some point.
Right.
Many others won't. Like, what is your experience with when approaching sponsors about these things? Like, are they willing to take you up on any of these things, or are they just kind of waiting to see how the industry evolves? Like, what are you noticing there?
Well,
I don't know if you get into sales, but...
I do. Get drug in on calls. I do. It depends on the sponsor. We do software for device and pharma. Some of the pharma trials we ran. One of the CROs ran a trial for Roche on an oncology. There's a big bandwidth, because when you're talking about an oncology phase 3 drug for, let's say, chemo, that's brick and mortar, and that's very traditional. Now we're talking about looking through EMRs and transferring data to EDCs and stuff like that to make it more effective. But obviously the video consent process is really applicable.
Yeah.
Or, the remote blood draw that we talked about isn't really applicable. Telemedicine may be for follow-up with the participant in the trial if they're an outpatient. If they're inpatient, it's pretty traditional. But the technology's demand from the large CROs has been going through e-consent. I can't name names, or I guess I won't name names, but e-consent is a big one for them. Another big one is recognition, basically recognizing the patient. There's some interest in that. That's already been done if you go to the ASTRO conference for radiation oncology, they have facial recognition systems for the patient coming in for treatment, which I think is kind of overkill.
Now, wouldn't they be concerned? Wouldn't they be concerned about HIPAA in those cases?
Well, it's the device for recognition is inside the hospital already, so it's within their system. But to go to HIPAA compliant software, and this is something more for the IT guys and the CEO of my company to talk about. There's obviously some regulatory stuff that it has to be encrypted. It's an encryption level. It's the ability to basically keep it safe. And I think industry has exceeded FDA's base requirements by quite a bit. You're seeing a lot of companies just de facto from other industries, i.e. Silicon Valley, that they're a lot more sophisticated about the encryption than what the FDA is requiring. Now, I don't know about Germany, Japan, any of the other countries we share regulatory guidance with. But going back to it, what's interesting on device is we're seeing some new entrants into the industry as a whole. So it's not the same old sponsors that you're used to seeing, the Medtronics or the J&J companies or that kind of thing. You're seeing some technology companies, as you probably read about in the news, coming into this, and they're going to come in pretty heavy. Apple just announced they're going to get more into monitoring vitals and that kind of thing. So that's going to lend itself to this industry. I think you're going to see a lot more devices. We're going to see, I don't want to say diagnostics. I would say body. I would say monitoring of systems will be the next devices coming out. And not that they're going to come up with a diagnosis per se, but they're going to monitor a process in the body or, how the body's functioning at some levels.
Yeah. But right now, the biggest demand you're seeing is around the video consent.
Not video consent, just e-consent, believe it or
E-consent.
not. So e-consent can be just a digital form, legal form that they read and sign.
Okay.
I like the video. I was talking to Charlie Pierce 2 years ago. I just messaged him yesterday, and I said, hey, Charles, I think we got this e-consent thing figured out. And he goes, really? I told him about it. And he's been a certified principal investigator and been involved in trials for probably 35, 40 years.
Wow.
And
Is he based out of Tampa over there with you?
no, he's in Cincinnati.
Okay.
He's in Cincinnati, and he's partially retired. But he came back to me. He goes, "Well, Lee, you gotta have body language. You gotta read that. You gotta do this. You gotta have the interaction." I'm like, you're right. I said, "What about a video where you could actually?" And he goes, "Yeah, that'd be okay." So that's how we got talking about it. But it does take up a lot of bandwidth, but the consent process, the CRFs. What is interesting about the industry is they can't, they're still hitching the pair of horses up to the automobile.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is they're still doing a paper CRF and then putting it into an EDC or trial management software system, which I think is kind of silly.
You mean a paper source?
Yeah, paper source. So they're doing their paper CRFs, and then they're having somebody, and I'll use a 1988 term, data entry person, entering the data into the trial management software.
Every single study we have here I'm at one of my clinics is paper source. Someone enters it in the EDC. Every single study. There is one study that we are using eSource now. But just for certain rating assessments, not for all the assessments.
Well, let me paint a picture for you. So let's say we have a trial, and let's say we're doing a traditional oncology, and we got the patients in the hospital. So we have everything electronic. So now we have a pharmacist that can use the inventory aspect of a software system to scan in the placebos and the IP. So at that point, they can scan it in. It reads everything that you would have on that UPC or QR. That goes right into it. Now we've taken the factor or variable of the pharmacist entering a wrong number into a system manually, right? It's a lot easier to read and compare and say, yep, that is right. That's what the box says. This is what's been scanned. And it back checks against my system that I've had from the sponsor. Yes, it is this lot and stock number and date. So, there's some quality control checks. Now let's get the drug out onto the floor. So now we have a nurse that can scan the participant's ID badge.
Mm-hmm.
They're inpatient. So we verified it. Now, you know what happens with that document? Now we have exact date and time stamp, and we have a geolocation. We can't geolocate with a paper. We can't. Can you really have an official date time stamp when you're doing a CRF, that's a big thing. People try to backdate. Oh, I forgot to put the time down, or draw the one line and make the correction. Right? We don't have to make a correction. It's already absorbed. It's already picked up. So they scan that
People,
person.
Dr. Mac, people never do that. Backdating in this way.
That's a test question. You draw one line initial.
That's right.
Um, and then they scan the investigational product. So let's say they're hanging chemo. They scan that bag. It gives them a green light. It confirms that it's the right IP for the right arm. If it's a multi-arm, and then they hang it, they can go through. There's some other. They can come back and maybe you design your CRF to have a second scan when it's complete. So you go back and scan when it's complete. Let's say you're really like you just don't trust your staff. Let's just say that. So now we can actually have them video record, do a short video recording of them pulling the completed chemo drug off.
Wow.
So we can put that, or maybe we have them take a picture.
So this could put an end to fraud, at least temporarily.
You're really tightening up how you're running the trial, the quality control, all that kind of stuff. Let's say they have a reaction. That can be documented just with some simple. If you build your CRF, let's say they have their iPad that they're using for the trial, and they have an adverse event form. They can go through it and slide it, right? And as soon as they slide and put the stuff in, they can hit send. You can have a system where it alerts 2 people or 20 people instantly via text, via email. So now all your team that is there for an AE or an SAE, the person just records it, just as quick as you can, and then you hit send, and within a half a second, everybody knows what's going on. So you can have the person still working with the participant, and they know their team's already coming. So, and then that lends itself to effectively reporting to FDA.
Sure.
You've already had it documented, you've already had it sent to your system, that kind of thing.
And this plays well into the new GCP revisions where basically the FDA, for those that don't know, in a nutshell, the FDA emphasized the importance of sponsor oversight for studies. No longer can you just say, hey, the CRO was managing this, we don't know anything about that. No, now the FDA says you have to know what's going on, right? And so this plays right into that because it makes it easier for them to do that.
Right, let's take it to that level. Let's take it to an AE or SAE, and it's reported, and they've dealt with it. The participant's okay. It's an hour later. Now, part of that, alert team that we sent out would probably be to the sponsor's monitor or monitors, right? So they would get an alert. And you can even have the software, so we can put it in an RSS feed. So if you're out to dinner, certain people on your team will get RSS feeds coming across their lock screen.
Wow.
So as soon as that AE happens, within 2 seconds, everybody on that team's got an RSS feed, and let's say it's a monitor. They go, oh, what is it? Oh, it's an AE. Okay, this doesn't look bad, or I'm going to call them and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And then they call them, and they go, I might want to take a look at this. So they go and log on to the software. And if you design your trial correctly, what you do is you have the monitor be able to see everything and touch nothing. And, you just have the same thing for your FDA person. They can log on and see everything, but they can't adjust anything. So they have this big clear window of everything going on, so they can look in near real time.
Viewer only.
Yeah. And they can look at and see exactly what's going on with that participant and advise whoever they need to within the sponsor's organization.
Yeah, we have something similar with our CRO. I don't know if it's that innovative, but we use Intralinks VIA, and it's a trial master file. And it's also a virtual workspace, so when something gets uploaded, everyone on that who has access to that folder, and you can be an editor, an owner, a viewer only, different levels of access, they all get a notification. Now, of course, you can turn notifications off, and you won't know unless you log in and see it, but which I have, because I'll get 80 notifications an hour, so I turned it off. But
that's you got to design the trial right. You got to design it, when it's a design issue.
That's
What's
right.
important and what's not. So,
For
you
our
know,
staff, it's more manageable. It's because I'm a owner of every folder, and I don't need to see every single document being uploaded, so I turned it off.
right,
But if you were just one staff member with one folder or two folders, it's not that bad.
right. Or you can go to your report format where it's actually gone into a report. So let's say you do create a AESAE report, then you can just log into that and see exactly what's going on with
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and back into the file. But I think from a compliance standpoint, but what's interesting, and this is probably interesting for your class, is now the question becomes what is the source document? So if you think of that certification test, the source document. Remember the exam paper, and you write the BP down on it.
Yeah,
Is that question anyway?
yeah.
So I guess if we're talking about it, the source document would be, in that case, the E form that they recorded, let's say the AE on, and they have their AE form and they fill it out and send it. At that point, when it's sent, just like when you write ink to paper, then it becomes the source document. So before
Right.
it's entered into and executed, it's just a form, and then when it's executed, and you save it, send it, archive it, whatever you're doing with it, then that becomes the source data. And I think that's what people have trouble wrapping their head around. People go, "Oh, we can't do all electronic." I'm like, why not just take the pen and paper away from them? And they
Yeah.
just kind of.
I mean, isn't
It's sacrilege.
eSource is pen and paper? It just happens to be on a tablet.
Right, exactly, and it's getting there, and not that you'd have, everybody's concerned. Well, is it going to be backed up? Well, we've been running on EHR systems for our health records in 98% of the places now for a minimum of 3 to 4 years. Because Medicare had the stick come out in I think 2014 on that, so everybody's got an EHR. So a lot of people just don't have paper charts anymore. And
Yeah.
now with the clouds and multiple storage locations and the security,
What is the news on that? Because I'm not keeping up to date with EHR, and I guess we can wrap up with this one, but we'll do more, Dr. Mac. These are great. Um, what is it with EHRs? I know hospitals, universities are moving towards those, but I work primarily with private practices, the small, mom and pop physician
right?
offices, and they hate it. They use paper only. What are those? Wasn't there some kind of mandate that everyone switch at some point?
No, you just take the hit. I think it's 7%. I think Medicare is 7% less. I think that's the hit,
So
but
they'll
it's
reimburse you 7% less if you don't switch.
right, right. So it's a stick. It was a carrot. They were actually given a higher percentage a few years back. If you get like 103% of what was billable because you were on electronic, but I think technology now is getting to the point where the interesting thing is voice recognition, voice to text. As we get better and more accurate, being able to chart that way is, I think, going to really add some faster turn times to patient consultations and all that stuff.
Interesting. So instead of having a transcriber, because most
Yeah,
doctors, they used to, at least back in the day, record into a device and then send it off to a transcriber and they would get it. Someone in India would do it and send it back to them.
how I did it, and it depends on the patient. I would do that. I'd do voice to text bedside, and then I would copy and paste it into a note. And how you could do that is, you'd hate to say patient presents while you're sitting there going like, the patient presents with da 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 da, da, and they're sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
So what you can do is basically just say, hey, would you mind if I record this? I'm going to make some notes as we go along, and I don't put the patient presents. I'll say da 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 da. I'll put notes in it. Patient it complains of da 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 da, and it's okay. because you're doing it anyway. You're sitting there with pen and paper, and you're writing as they're talking. So
Right.
if you're trying to get through something fast, or it's not handy, sometimes it works. I would like to see it eventually go to a conversation you and I are having. The computer knows that your voice is the patient, and I'm the physician, and it just notates everything, and then you use machine learning and unstructured data source and movement to an EHR, where you can actually transcribe that whole record and conversation in. Doctor says da 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 da, patient responds da 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 da, and it automatically populates your fields for
Mm-hmm.
you. So
That would make a lot more sense.
so we'd have a transcription of like our conversation, and then you
So
could go back and
essentially, you're always going to be on either recording, audio, video, constantly. I mean,
yeah.
how soon until doctors just start walking around with GoPros on their heads, constantly recording?
Yeah, instead of the old reflector light, right? You have a
Right?
GoPro on your head. That would be
Yeah.
interesting. That would be interesting. I haven't thought about it like that yet, or haven't taken it to that level.
Well,
But
just
I
like
think
police officers are now required to have, for
right,
different reasons, but for doctors it would be to document later what occurred.
right, right, and you could, interestingly enough, I think for psychiatry it'd really take off
Yes, that's primarily what I
because
do. Yeah.
we're looking at how the person's reacting, how they're answering questions. You can go back and say, well, now what did they say about that when I asked them if they did illicit drugs,
Right.
and you can go back and look at it and go, yeah, I think they're underestimating it, or
Yes.
something to that effect, and you can review what was said. And
Very interesting what's coming about very shortly. And
what's your take on I guess the new CRAs? You said you teach this, but
mm,
what are they? What's their concerns with technology? What have they brought up?
well, they don't want to put all this time and effort into, because a lot of them have to go, quit their regular jobs. Maybe they're in another industry, but they want to do research. So they quit their current job where they're making more to get an entry level position here. And their fear is by the time they finally reach or surpass where they are currently in research, that the machines will take over and then they're done, right? Like
Uh,
that's their fear.
no, I think we just talked about the monitor sitting there at dinner, right, and getting RSS feeds. Um, if you're a CRA and you could actually the speed of trials is going to speed up. So we're going to see what would take 3 years take a year and a half.
And the
So
supply of trials too. We talked about that last time,
yeah,
right?
should be lower costs, should be more. So I think instead of working for one company and having windshield time flying around to different sites, they're going to be working at home or from an office online like you and I are, 8, 9 hours a day, and maybe they're working on 3 or 4 trials instead of just one.
Right.
So I think that's the job will change duty wise a little bit, but they're still going to need that human factor for quality control.
Mm-hmm.
Answering questions, making sure everything is going right. They're going to have a lot more interactions, I think, with people in remote locations, whether that's a site or the actual participant asking a
Yeah.
question and then coming back and the same thing with the monitors. The monitors are going to be logged on watching data streams all day. It'd be like the Matrix screen.
Yeah, the jobs are definitely evolving, and nothing's gonna stay the same. They added an extra C to Alcoa. I just learned this yesterday. Because of the 2016 GCP revisions, they added a Alcoa dash C now, and
Oh,
it's exactly what we're talking about. That last C is complete. So no longer, perfect example, a male and a pregnancy test. Sometimes sites leave that blank.
mhm.
Well, that's not complete, right? So now they have to put NA.
Right, right, or yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Have a complete section, so it's not just an open ended. They forgot to answer it, and
yes,
that would be a mandatory field in a CRF. So they would have to answer it before they could get out of it and save it.
correct, correct, correct.
So
So interesting developments, some far-fetched, some right here we're dealing with now. The other
Yeah.
day, I'll end with this story. I was doing a e-source assessment for a schizophrenic patient, and then I finished it, submitted, put my stylus here, went to go do something, came back to my desk, and wanted to write something on paper. And I grabbed the stylus and started writing. I say, hey, this is not a pen. This is a stylus. So I got so used to using that it's become second nature. And I think we're just gonna start getting used to these things because it's really no different using the tablet um, as opposed to using paper and pen. I mean, after a while, you don't even notice like the graphics look just like ink. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I got a Mac Pro and an iPencil, and
Oh, you do? Okay.
I like taking. I use it to take notes when I go to meetings. I'll take handwritten notes
So you'll
and do
write
that.
on your laptop?
Yeah, my iPad. Yeah, I'll just take
Ah,
notes. I mean, you can digitize it. I typically don't, but it's nice to have it saved already. I don't have to keep going through pads of
interesting.
paper for traveling. It's nice.
I might need that new iPad Pro.
Yeah, and check out. We're looking at Proteus. That's Proteus. It's a
Proteus. Okay.
Yeah, it's a chip, semiconductor chip that you can put on a pill.
Ah, free
So
stock tip?
I don't know. I'm still looking at it. But
Okay.
I was thinking of it for trials that, you stick a chip on the IP and now you can scan it, you can get information after they ingest it.
Yeah, you see, that's another like yeah, compliance, logistics. We didn't even get into that. We get into that
I
next
know.
time,
Okay.
because
Sounds good.
we're actually seeing that. But thank you very much, Dr. Mac. Thank
Thanks.
you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye bye.